This is Neighborhood Disputes Urban Sociology Final. The city of focus is Pittsfield, Massachusetts, in a county called Berkshire. And in Berkshire County, we were focusing on harassment orders this particular presentation. And so Pittsfield, Mass is the largest city in Berkshire County. In 2010, the median income was $35,655. Median income for family was $46,228. The average household is not upper class, and there is various levels of poverty, meaning the area of Pittsfield in general is divided up between middle, upper, and lower class as well. And so we notice with that particular number with medium income families, it's not really that high with the average number, which paints a picture that though some are successful and though some are surviving and doing well, there's also a lot of impoverished areas that I'll get into later. Pittsfield is also more of a democratic city in terms of voters registration, and this was information I got from 2012. And so the numbers were very larger for Democratic voters, which also can show some sort of progressiveness, somewhat of a city that is in favor for the people. But there's still some delays and also some pushbacks within the city in terms of services that are provided for people who may be dealing with homelessness, who may be dealing with addiction as well. Berkshire Regional Transit Authority is the local transportation that goes throughout the county, and I thought it was important to highlight this in this particular project because Berkshire County is a very unique place within itself outside of Pittsfield, Mass, being the largest city in Berkshire County. Berkshire County within itself can be a very rural area, meaning that there are areas that are so destitute and so far from services and agencies, isolated from even courthouses. And so Berkshire Regional Transit Authority, also known as BRTA, serves as that bus line that can bring people throughout the county. It does stop very early, which also can be a hindering role for people who are looking for employment past the normal 9 to 5, 7 to 3 sort of hours. Anybody that's working evening may have a challenge if they do not have adequate transportation. Pittsfield also has two highways that connects it with downtown. That's US 7, known as Route 7, and US 20, also known as Route 20. Those are sort of the connecting highway points of Pittsfield, Massachusetts. This is sort of just like a data perspective I thought was important. It deals with the large amount of people that we have, which is not that large. In total, there's 43,927,000 people. That is not a large city when we think about places like New York City, or we even think about Boston being in Massachusetts. It's not a large amount of people. And so this is just a little bit of the demographics of Pittsfield. Settled in 1752. And incorporated in 1891. So I just wanted to make sure to give that. Our current mayor is Linda Tyre as well. We have courts throughout Berkshire County. Juvenile District Court. District Court is in there's a Pittsfield District Court, Southern Berkshire District Court, which is located in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and also Northern District Court, which is in North Adams as well. And so each part of the county has their courts, and people are able to access them depending on the neighborhood. Park Square is sort of the center place that you will see from downtown Pittsfield. You cannot come to Pittsfield without riding through Park Square. It is right at the heart and center, which connects through South Street, connects from North Street is that centering point. And so it's sort of like a rotary that can get you to East Street and other areas throughout Pittsfield, sort of our business area. And there's some picture there that sort of shows North Street. There's hotels, there's local businesses and restaurants as well in this downtown area. Now, to get into restraining orders in Massachusetts and harassment order, I think it's really, really important that we understand the history of harassment orders, because 209A orders are orders that originated for people that are involved in relationships. And a lot of times when people think of harassment orders, they think immediately of domestic violence. So you have to ask yourself, when did harassment orders come into play? And so known as Chapter 258E, law became in effect on May 10, 2010. These are also known as harassment orders. And some of the differences here, as I displayed with harassment orders, there has to be three or more separate incidents, unless there's a criminal connection, or in a case involving rape or any sort of criminal stalking. Then that person does not have to prove that they have any form of harassment at three different times. The difference with a 209A order is that that person was involved with that person at one point, married to them, or in some sort of relationship. A harassment order does not have to be someone that you were involved with. And that was a way to protect victims, is why this law became in effect, because people weren't getting sort of the protection that they needed within the courts if they weren't involved with someone. And of course, throughout the years, these issues have become sort of overused. Under the statute, I explained that, and also this is the form that is filled out in the district court. Someone can obtain this online, and also they can fill this out at the local district court in Pittsfield. A person that is looking for this would fill this out in its entirety, and then the clerk's office runs sort of a background check known as a BOP as well, to receive this person's record, both the plaintiff and the defendant, which is going to pull up any court records or any open cases, which is very important for a judge to be aware of. One of the things that will happen is once someone is given this order, they will then be given a two-party hearing to come back and then go before the judge to see if they can even approve for. And so some of the issues with neighborhood disputes, as we know, that COVID was a huge factor in the courts. And so I've been working at a district attorney's office for over 3.5 years, and neighbor to neighbor issues have really, really escalated and increased over these past 2 years. Some of this can do with people being home, loss of jobs. Addiction is a huge issue in Berkshire County and Pittsfield alone, throughout the county, but in Pittsfield as well. Also mental health services, alcohol issues, all these things have shown up. People have been threatened. Racism plays a factor in this. In disagreements, police usually come and show up to this, and then people are coming to the court looking for things where sometimes it really can be a landlord may be able to resolve this. And some of the things, people are living in tight quarters on top of each other, duplexes as well, and so where they have no real good boundaries. And so some things can start off a small a disagreement, and then it escalates. And sometimes when people come into the court and they work with a victim witness advocate, it's really some issues that are not really that major. And so some of the things that the judges frown upon is that they don't like dealing with these issues because that's not what they were originally created for under the statute. The city, as I mentioned earlier, is divided by class level, social economic status, which places the city in sections, and many of those disputes happen in reoccurring areas, sort of the hot spot areas. And so one of those areas are known as the West Side, which could be quote unquote what people call the ghetto, more an urbanized area where people, families, and there's great families there as well, but it's very impoverished area. They've been fixing it up through the West Side Initiative, but it's been an area that's been sort of forgotten about, where redlining of homes and driving families of colors to be isolated over the past 30-40 years in one area, where they sort of neglect that. And so the city's been working hard to sort of change that approach in that particular neighborhood. But unfortunately, Pittsfield is broken up into sort of an upper class, middle class, lower impoverished area, where you go in these particular areas and you see drugs, you see the impoverished, you see the issues, you physically see the structures of the homes, and a lot of the neighborhood disputes happen there. And where you feel like people are going through things, people have lost finances. You know, COVID has definitely pushed people and pressured people in a way that I believe it hadn't prior to COVID. People were just living and dealing with these issues. And so mental health also is a major issue in Pittsfield. Section 35 has come up often in the courts. And so I think that's a huge part of that. And one of the main challenges with these orders are being granted for neighbor to neighbor is that, again, a judge has to be able to distinguish between the two parties. Who's the aggressor? Who's the one that's really in fear of this? And so one of the things that they may not even grant it at all. And so to wrap this down is that Pittsfield District Court, we have the victim witness advocates. They're able to be placed in that court and be of assistance to work with people looking to apply for these orders to help, as they can work with the plaintiff to determine if there are 3 separate incidents and other referrals. Say plan advocates are connected through MOVA as well, and work for local agencies here in Pittsfield through Elizabeth Freeman Center, which is a domestic violence agency. They don't work with people that have neighborhood disputes. They're going to only work with people if it's a rape involved, and that's where they work with someone that has a criminal harassment order that they're filling out. And so when there's criminal harassment charges, one would have to violate an order that was already granted. So if someone violates that order, that is where the court, the district attorney's office rather, and the police actually are able to then place charges, what is known as a criminally harassment violation order, which can, most of those crimes are sort of resolved in a probationary period for like a continuation without a finding, which we call it at short-term or QOF, and then they're going to ask that person to remain away from the victim. And sometimes they have to put the exact yardage or footage on that particular order or conditions on the court case, because if you're a neighbor, you're so in close contact. And again, it holds so much barrier. But addiction plays a part of this, financial plays a part of it, stress plays a part of it, racism, how people are treated because if they're in a certain community, LGBTQI, language barriers are huge also. In some of these neighbor to neighbor disputes, people sometimes already have criminal pending matters with one another, or they have a mother has a criminal a mother will come in obtain a harassment order because maybe their daughter was involved with someone, and now that partner is now threatening the mother and or the father. There's so many different reasons why people come in, but neighbor to neighbor disputes have not been something new, but they have increased over time. And so one of the areas is that they're trying to constantly make sure that people are able to work with someone within the court to even see if, one, do they qualify, and two, are there other referrals and programs and agencies that they can receive help from, so that these issues are not constantly coming in here and a criminal harassment order is just serving as this temporary sort of break for people, when really the criminal harassment order under the statute was really to serve victims who were dealing with severe crimes, and that weren't necessarily in a relationship with someone. So I think over time is that people are going to continue to rally to make sure that people are not just having these petty disputes, but that if there is a real issue in fear or someone feels in danger, then they can then obtain a criminal harassment order. So here in Pittsfield, again, it's a unique city, a different place, but there has been a lot of changes, and over the last 10 years, addiction has been a major factor to why some of these issues in certain neighborhoods have increased. I thank you so much. I'm Nikita Bethel-Smith, presenting about neighbor to neighbor disputes.